Welcome to a new episode of the International Comics Collective, only on UCPN.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new ICC Live. What's up, gentlemen? How are you?
Oh, to us.
Yeah, man.
Good. Thanks, Al.
Look at this. I'm seeing the faces behind the voices of the ICC. So, gentlemen, Dave, first of all, how are you, man? We missed you last week at Virtual Con, which went really well. So, thank you for performing your duties out there. How have you been?
No, I was gutted to miss that. But no, I was doing my good duty, my civil work. As for those who don't know, for the last year I've been working in healthcare. So I am currently working with some severely autistic individuals who cannot look after themselves. So I have to keep them working.
Gotcha. Well, please continue to stay safe. And Chris, man, thank you for your appearance and hanging out with us last week. That was a lot of fun, man. How you been doing during the course of the week out there?
It was indeed a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. That was really good. And thank you for all the positive response we got on this. And thanks to Al for all the hard work he put in. I'm doing fine, and we decided it was too much fun. And we were really sad that Dave was not around. And we said, let's
I want to make up for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely been a crazy week, but the con definitely, at least, was for me the highlight of last week, if you will, which went fantastic. So it was an absolute pleasure. So with that, I want to mention something. You guys know I'm a big Spawn fan. All right. I don't know if you guys heard, but Tommy Farm recently has released a Kickstarter to re-release the original figures, fully articulated, modern, if you will. And and I have my OG still packed up in the packages, so I was eating all of this up. But the reason I mention it, would you believe? I mean, a lot of people talk crap about Spawn, this, that. You know what I mean? Or don't respect the popularity. I mean, again, 300 is strong for a reason, but he made $1 million in under 24 hours, bro, on Kickstarter.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I mean,
isn't that nuts?
Yeah, almost everybody I follow on Kickstarter, I got a notification from that they kicked in.
Oh, okay. Look at that.
Yeah.
It's wild. I mean, the goal was 100K. He reached that goal within 13 minutes that it opened.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was like watching, remember the ticker in New York with the national debt that kept going? That's what that looked like on Kickstarter. I'm like, what in the hell? Wow. I was floored by seeing this tremendous outpour of support for the project. I mean, right now he's pushing the next tier because it's already surpassed 1.1, I believe.
Right.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, man. And I don't know if you guys saw, he also had an opinion, because I know last time we were chatting, we were talking about the state of the industry and what's going on and how COVID's affecting it. And there was a recent interview with Todd on Forbes by Rob Salkowitz, and talking to him about Spawn and the Kickstarter. But obviously, it did get down into questions about the industry. And I definitely want Dave's opinion on this. Todd goes on to say, quote, "If they put me in charge, and no one wants that, I understand. Here's what I do. I take Image, Dark Horse, Marvel, and DC, the top 90% of the market, and make a message from the four of us as a unified front. One message." Do you believe that that's something that would work? He's talking about, maybe releasing digital, but to bring people back to the shops, have that unified, maybe multi-crossover events or stories to pull people back in. What do you think, Dave?
Well, remember, when we did the podcast, we talked about like what what to do, and we came up with the idea, like, yeah, have Marvel and DC do a crossover.
Yeah.
And as you pointed out before we came on the air, you know, even if Marvel and DC were to just put back into print the Justice League versus Avengers book, just do that. Even if you didn't do something new, just do that. Or maybe re-release it with a nice pinup gallery of top new creators now. Do that and have all the money go from that to help.
See, yeah, you're right. That was that's an interesting topic that you bring up, because that was also brought up on on another website called Newsarama, where they were talking about why not just then re-release that, and repurpose that old content.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be great if, that Superman, Spider-Man treasury, if they just remastered that, did what they did with the Superman Muhammad Ali book, and do a nice hardback edition of that, re-release that as well. You know, they could do all of these. They could do an oversized of the Batman Hulk, the Superman Spider-Man that Marvel produced with the John Buscema artwork. Issue these out, reissue these in oversized format, hardback, and all the money going to the industry. And when I say the industry, I know the immediate, a lot of people's immediate thought is for retailers. And they are. I mean, it's the retailers are. They're the group that are between the rock and a hard place all the time. They don't get to say, they don't have any say in what's produced by the publishers.
Unfortunately.
And they don't get sale or return. They have to buy this they listen to what the publishers say, they buy it and hope that's what their customers want. And the customers don't get to choose what's published. They can only choose what to buy.
Yes.
But I think there's another important part, which is right now, Marvel and DC are already cutting back on the amount of titles they're doing. Well, if they're cutting back, that means artists and writers aren't getting work.
Yep, they're losing jobs. Yep.
And chances are the books they're cutting back on are ones that aren't probably the big royalty-driven books. So the top creators that have probably got a lot of money, they've got a lot of royalties. If you work on Batman, Justice League, those books, you've probably got some decent royalties you can ride on for a while. It's the creators who are doing 20 pages a month on a book that doesn't pay royalties. Those are the people that need that help. Those are the people that need that money. And when you look at further down, you've at least Marvel and DC pay a page rate. Image, if your Image don't pay page rates, it's royalty driven. So if you're not out there buying it, you don't get money. So those artists, and then when you get to IDW, Boom, Dark Horse, they're not great page rates to start with. So people are just scraping by at best.
So they're at page rate as well, but not at the same rate as a Big Two.
No,
damn.
Yeah, not even close. I mean, I know of companies that pay for art, for script, art, color, lettering, what DC pays for just script. So that gives you
Wow.
So again, it's like, yes, I'd like to say that retailers need help, but the creators more so. Creators have on whole, en masse, have a much harder time of it than anybody else.
Absolutely do it. That's why I kind of wanted to set up that virtual con, help the few that that we do know and we start. I would like to do it again. Anything to help spread the message on their work, and bless them with an opportunity. I mean, not with the cons down, and obviously, what's going on with Diamond, and how one company had the power to basically put a stranglehold on the industry.
Well, don't feel. I mean,
on the print side.
Oh yeah, but you see, again, when we look at history, we know that it was back in the early 80s that Marvel decided to screw the entire system, and which it never recovered from. You know, we all saw when they bought Heroes World, and all of a sudden Heroes World then had the exclusive on Marvel Comics. Everybody else had to have an exclusive, which all of a sudden, so, you know, oh, okay, Diamond's got DC exclusive, you know, Capital got Image, but ultimately, you know, Capital can't, you know, companies that size couldn't survive on, you know, just Image. They needed Marvel, and they needed DC, and all these companies went from dealing with the infrastructure of distributors on a local level, because back when we had 8 or 9 distributors, they all distributed on a local level. That's how they competed. So it wasn't direct competition for stores individually. It was geographic. And then all of a sudden all of these distributors had to switch up. It's like, oh, okay, now we have to deliver comics from, you know, hey, Capital's in Wisconsin, and now it's having to deliver to New York and Hawaii for its comics, whereas it was just dealing with sort of, you know, the northeastern states.
All right, but check this out. I have someone up here. You know, I have 2 people here actually asking questions.
Okay.
First one is Brian Hawkins. He goes, do you think then we're going to see more creators from Image, etc., Boom, IDW join more crowdfunding options? And then the second question comes from Random Dude, where he goes, so would it make sense to start opening up the distribution market to create healthy competition?
Well, I think that's exactly what we want to talk about, because the other part of Todd's proposal was that the big companies get together and sit together and talk about it, because at the moment it seems nobody has a plan. And we are talking about this crisis, but this crisis will go on even when the stores open, because rumor has it Diamond is not coming back.
Rumors. I see things to the opposite. I hope it's not true.
But they put out an email that they're not going to pay their publisher, their customer, for the product that they already received until August in full. It does not tell you, or that tells you a lot about the health of Diamond. Okay. But independent of that, is it a good idea to rely on Diamond exclusively? I don't know. Comic professionals need to figure this out, and we had precedent, because if you remember, or if you probably can't remember if you're not really that old, but if you go back in comic book history, what happened in 1954? There was the Senate hearings.
Okay.
Bill Gates made a fool of himself. The newsline in the New York Times was publisher calls woman with decapitated head in good taste, and nobody wanted to have anything to do with comics anymore. You couldn't get distribution. Newsstands refused to stock comic books. So there was a similar situation. The comic book industry lost distribution more or less overnight. What did they do? They sit together, all of them, and they talked, what is the best way forward? They tried this before. That was not the first time they sat together. In fact, EC Comics was one of the first companies who said, let's figure this out. This horror thing is getting out of hand. Let's put together some guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
But the others refused. And then in 1954, it was DC and Archie Comics who said, well, let's sit together now, because we are losing our business. And this was not the first time, because the pulps, if you remember the lurid pulps from the 1930s, they were published by DC Comics, the forerunner of DC Comics, and other comic book companies, or other companies that also went into comic books. But these were also comic book companies who put out these pulps. And what happened in the 1930s is very, very much the same what happened in 1954, because interest groups and regulators say, this is not okay, this is pornographic material, we must stop this. And this is why the pulps died. And the publishers, like Dornenfeld and the guys who ran DC Comics, or the company that would become DC Comics, or Martin Goodman, they had already established other companies that put out comic books. So they switched directly from pulps to comic books, but the pulps died. And had they not established a comic code in 1954, had they not sat together, the comic book industry would have died. A lot of people say, oh, the comic code is an evil thing. Well, it saved the comic book industry.
Gotcha.
What was needed was that they all sat together and said, this is the path forward. We have one plan now. This is the guideline. This is the principle how we will proceed. And this is needed right now. We need to sit together and figure out a way to go forward. Or call it a day. There's no alternative.
I think the difference is these were publishers that they were publishers. That was their core business, or in most places it was the core business. The big two today, comics aren't their core business, and so it's they still. I can't honestly see Warner Brothers or AT&T Warner and Disney getting together and just working something out. They are, I think that the comics have become promotional material for their TV shows and films, and the accountants there don't feel the same love for the characters and the history that we do. It's like the equivalent to them. Their comics are like blue and yellow M&Ms. That's how they feel about it.
But if you remember that DC Comics, or what eventually became DC Comics, comic books was not the main business of that company, because the owner of DC Comics, or what was National Comics, Detective Comics, and All American Comics, but ultimately became DC Comics, was Harry Donenfeld. And Harry Donenfeld, he owned independent news. If you remember the times when Stan Lee at Marvel Comics could put out only 8 comics a month. Remember those days? That was because they got distribution from independent news, which was owned by DC Comics.
Right.
So Donenfeld still had his distribution network, and he was distributing magazines left and right, fashion magazines, stuff like that. He could have said, well, forget the comics. I have my distribution company, it works. But he saw ahead, and he said, well, basically, if we let this die, this will have a ripple effect. And the same is true if you think about Warner Brothers, if you think about Disney. If they let the comics die, they're at the moment their IP farm. They will kill the movies eventually. And if there's not a visionary who says, well, basically, if you let comics die, if you let these trademarks die, what will be our next movies?
But I mean, they're not going to let the trademarks die, and the trademarks exist now. I mean, we've got platforms that, it's that those old things. See, a trademark, you had to show usage every 5 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if you have it forever on Comixology, they can keep it up there forever. So it's you're using it.
No, they have to reuse the title. That's why you saw Haunted Tank and all these titles reused in the 70s and at certain points in time.
In the 70s, yes, but now they exist on Comixology all the time. They are being published, so they are there.
But they are not new. They are not new material. Don't you need new material in order to retain the trademark? No, you don't.
No, you just have to show that you're using it. Okay. And so as long as it exists all they need to do is promote it. They can say, hey, we're having a special discount on Haunted Tank comics this month. Comixology, it's half price. There you are. That's it. You've promoted comics, you've promoted Haunted Tank, and it still exists.
Right.
You think they will not sit together?
No, it's been tried in the past. And you see, even when you were talking about the Comics Code Authority, the formation of that was help keep alive a fairly healthy comics industry. We don't have a fairly healthy comics industry. Not as, if you talk about the direct sale market and the stores that Diamond distribute to, that is not a healthy market.
That's true.
The comics market as a whole is strong. It sells outside the direct sale market. It sells in bookstores. We've got other companies now involved in graphic novels, and they're doing very well. You've got kids buying graphic novels now. They're not Marvel and DC books, but they're buying a ton of graphic novels. So comics aren't going away. But what we're talking about is, potentially the death of the experience of going to a comic shop to buy your comics.
Yeah, the experience.
Don't forget that we saw the end of the newsstand.
Yeah.
You know, we saw the end of the you know, I remember being in New York in the late 80s, early 90s, and there was still lots of newsstands on every corner. You literally, like, you couldn't go a block without finding a newsstand, and they all had comics on. They all had comic books.
Yeah.
But and again, it's when Comixology launched, everyone thought, once they started to see that that first uptick of sales, they thought, this is it. The industry is saved. Digital comics is going to save comics. And I still think the problem is with comics is they are not accessible. Like, comics were disposable. That's why they were popular. You could just read it, and that was your fun. It was like, think about you. I know everyone hates to think about it this way, but think of it as a piece of stick of chewing gum. You put a stick of chewing gum in your mouth, you chew it for a while, it has flavor for a while, and then you spit it out when it's done. You don't think about it again. The majority of comic readers through the 50s and 60s treated comics like that.
Yeah.
They were disposable. You swapped them with your friends, you shared them, you traded. That's what you did with them.
But not at the price point of $4 or $5.
Well, no, that's it. That's it. You see, they became collectible items. Now we're collectible. You don't share them. You don't roll them up and stick them in your back pocket anymore. And well, no, I used to do that.
No, I know what you mean. In my early days of starting, becoming that collector, I would have a friend that he was the one that kind of really introduced me to the world of X-Men and stuff like that, right? But he was an older dude, and when he'd come and get my comic, he's there folding the page behind, going one at a time. Me, I'm one of these holding the 2-page, on the table. No, this dude is like flipping, holding every. I'm like, oh my God, you're rolling my spine. What are you doing? Anyway, besides that, I have someone that actually has said something to you. In regards to what you were talking about, says, Chris, which means the big two has to distribute, but wouldn't the wisest version of that be digital? And he continues, digital singles, and then trade paperback and graphic novels at stores.
Yeah. I'm a digital guy, because that is also the other aspect we need to take, or they need to take into consideration. I see all these discussions about the comic book industry and where this is going as very limited to the United States. If you want to sell comic books these days, you need to do it in a global market. And for me, it was a great boon when in 2011, when the New 52 kicked off, that was the moment DC went day and date on digital. Before that, you couldn't get the latest comics on Comixology, only older stuff, or you had to wait a few months. And Marvel, for the longest time, refused to do that. And when DC had the New 52, the launch, it was also the first time comic books were available day and date. And Marvel had to follow suit, basically. I'm in Germany, and getting my comics via Comixology is the easiest way for me. Plus, I enjoy the format. I'm not a collector now anymore. I have my comics on Comixology. I buy the omnibus, I buy certain hardcovers, but that's about it. Maybe that's the way forward. Maybe comic books need to change, and some have already changed. Buy old singles and sell them to old fans who want to read the stuff from the 60s and 70s anyway. All the stuff I see on Twitter where people say, oh, I got my shipment from comics. They're not talking about new comics. They're talking about receiving old comics. They're ordered from some dealer or from eBay, and they really have got this rare book from the 60s, from the 70s. That's the single issues people buy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. The fact that DC went first with day and date digital is something that would never have actually happened if Paul Levitz was still at DC.
Well, you say that.
Well, Paul was very. No, Paul was very. Yeah, he'd gone.
Yeah, he was out. Yeah.
Paul was very much looked after the retailer. After. He was. I always thought of him as the gate. The guardian at the gate of DC Comics, of what they were, what they stood for, characters' legacies, characters' histories, and one of the things I admired about Paul was sometimes, often we'd get lunch in Manhattan, and he would admit that he didn't know the way forward, because he was such a guardian of what had come before. he didn't know what the future looked like beyond just more of the same.
That's true.
He, unfortunately, he wouldn't always, or very, very rarely, in fact, would take advice or ideas that were potential ways forward. He ignored entire genres and media forms of comics that just, he would admit, just didn't appeal to him, like manga. It just didn't appeal to him.
So if he didn't like it, then no one else would have either, right?
Yeah, and
That mindset, I hate that. Ugh.
Well, he just felt that most of the retailers he knew felt the same way. They were old school comic fans who, remember, most retailers got into retailing to be able to get their comics cheap.
Yeah, true. You're right. Oh, it's true.
It is. It's a lot of retailers. I mean, and a lot of them actually became very good at retailing. They went on to become great retailers. But you don't become a good retailer unless you know what's good and you know how to sell that to your customers. The best way.
I have someone here, the random dude, complaining. He goes, "For me, the downfall though is the market for the older floppies is that the prices are just so inflated." But I mean, it's collectability, rarity. I mean, territory.
But what period is the cutoff for collectability? We started out talking about Spawn, and I'm pretty sure I can point you to several retailers who probably have several cases of Spawn #1 left still in their warehouse.
See, exactly. It's all how many prints, because I have issues of Spawn between the 90s and some between the 100s somewhere that have very low print runs that actually are worth 3 to 4 times more than the actual first issue. And besides, that first issue is not even his first appearance. His first appearance is even rarer. Some Malibu newsprint I held in my hand. It was just, I couldn't afford it. I wish I could have. It's about keys. Those first apps, those don't happen too often, although now they do right now. Every other week there's a new character. But back then, they were spaced out where you would find a very credible, villain that will test the, test the time. Go ahead.
See, I don't think that digital can't do that. I don't think digital is really going to take off well until publishers understand that you're not selling people a digital product. You're selling them a physical product.
Yeah.
So because you can't own it, because you can't take it to a convention and get it signed, because it's not going to accrue in value because you can't actually sell it.
Everybody has the same condition.
Yeah. So it's, there is there's nothing tangible about it. So therefore they're charging you the same price for something that the paper product built into the price is the cost of printing, the cost of shipping, postage, all of that, and the retailer's profit. But they're selling it directly to you now.
Yeah.
And the Comixology is your distributor, but why are you paying the same? Why are you saying they're paying the same price?
Because they want to. They don't want to ruin their business with the stores. Because if they had gone in 2011 and said, "Okay, we go day and date on digital, and all the new titles, you can buy all the 52 new books for $2 instead of what was it, $3 at that time."
Yep.
That would have killed the industry. Because the new 52 was such a boon for DC and the comic book industry at that time. With the sales they were doing in the first 2 months, had they decided to go a lower price rate, they would have killed the industry.
That shows you. Sorry, I was just going to say that shows you how weak the industry is.
Absolutely.
It shows you how weak the industry is when just having, one line, one new revamp, one reboot from one of the major companies could end the industry as we know it.
Yeah, but think about what happened when iTunes started. iTunes started because piracy. People were sick and tired of buying a whole CD for 1 or 2 songs. They saw, Napster, I get these songs for free. They didn't go on Napster because they wanted to steal the music, but they only wanted to download 1 or 2 songs.
A la carte.
But the record industry was losing out, and they all looked for a solution. And there was Steve Jobs who said, come to me, I have a solution. You can offer this legally and people will pay 99 cents for a song and they will no longer steal it because you make it available to them.
Mm-hmm.
And this killed the record store industry.
Oh, yeah, CDs. Yeah, man. I remember as a kid going to New York down to the Ville, hitting up Tower Records. I think
Exactly.
David may know Tower Records down in.
Oh yeah. Oh, I used to love Tower Records.
Yeah, I love going to that shop back then. You know, nothing. They used to be vendors selling mixtapes that were done too.
But I think we're missing the point. We're missing the point that you know, movies moved from silent movies into sound. They went from black and white to color. You know, we're entering an age now where you know, with these TV screens being, you know, such high quality and sound systems at home, you know, is it really worth spending? Like, if you go out with the family, is it really worth spending $60 to $100 to go out and see a movie when you could just sit and watch it at home?
That's the other industry that's failing. AMC, biggest movie theater chain in America, is about to file for bankruptcy.
Yeah, but, you know, but again, it's what are you paying for now? When you like, why is it that, you know, popcorn, a box of popcorn is, you know, $5-6, and that's a small one. You know, they you know, they won't let you take your own in. You have to buy the box of candy that's, you know, again, also $5. Like, and that's just one person. $10 for, you know, you have a drink and a box of candy or popcorn. That's $10. That's the same price as, like, that's, well, actually, I was about to say that's the same price as a movie ticket, but it's half the price of the movie ticket, because now I used to go to the Chinese theater a lot in Los Angeles, and that's regularly would cost you $20-25, you know, to see a film there. It's outpricing. You know, if you go back in time, we've seen more movies are released today or these days than used to run like 40 years ago.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Much more frequent.
Competition is greater everywhere. And
that's the interesting thing. In Germany, our biggest movie theater chain reduced their prices.
Right.
You can get a movie ticket to a latest Marvel blockbuster for €7.
Right.
And you can choose your own seat. Because they figured if they sell more, they will have more from it in the long run.
Yeah.
They go creative. They say, okay, this is a downtime. We have a screening room. Why not bring in a school class? You can book your own movie and we make a special deal for you.
Oh, look, my local movie theater here, it's a massive theater. They have a IMAX screen there as well, and all the tickets there, it's £5, which is about $6, $6.50.
Basically the same price. Huh?
Every time you guys say pounds and whatnot, I feel like, okay, how many weights do I got to take out of my pocket?
But what they do though is they have, you know, that little prime right in the center. All those, there's that little collection of prime seats. If you want to sit there, it's an extra £1 to sit there. So it's an extra $1.50 to sit there. You know, so there's little ways and means that, you know, you can just pull back a little bit of extra money if you need to. But yeah, and they sell T-shirts, they sell posters in the lobby.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Let
me ask you guys the question, because somebody, I don't know if you guys may know the answer though, but do either of you know whether or not digital reading or sales has increased for Comixology during COVID?
I don't know, to be honest. I would imagine it had. I think that because just purely from having more time on our hands and not wanting to go out.
There was an article that claimed, I don't know where I read it, was it Bleeding Cool or Newsarama or wherever, that digital sales were 10% of the print sales. I don't know if that's true, but it seems very low. The rate seems very low to me.
Well, digital sales had plateaued. I mean, it was, I think there was that period where a lot of people did run for it as the new way of reading comics. And recently there had been a move back into people wanting something physical again. But I think, as we've talked earlier, I think the idea of, I think we need to phase away, and I think we really do need to phase away from the printed floppy and just have them digital, and just have comic book stores as somewhere where you buy the trades. You can buy back issues of older comics. You can buy toys. You can buy T-shirts. You can buy posters. You can buy candy. You can buy
Same
soda.
thing that Brian had said, earlier, where it's just basically release, singles on digital, and then, the physical should be a trade that you could get out of the shop.
Or go with Dave's original idea. We talked about this on a more recent episode, where you say, okay, we stop the singles. Let the stores get the old product into the store, and people want to buy the old issues. But we put out original graphic novels. Remember the Alex Ross Fantastic 4 pages I put up on Twitter? Give Alex Ross some money, and this is your graphic novel for Fantastic Four for 2020, 21. 60 pages, 80 pages, hardbound, beautiful book, special event launch. You will sell. And you get this in print, and I will get this in print, because this is what you want to get in print.
Well, it also, brings about, why is it that we're working on comics now? I mean, back in the, as I said earlier, 50s and 60s, a lot of people thought when they bought comics, they bought them as disposable items. They rolled them up, they traded them. Comics today, while they're not, the collectors don't treat them as disposable, publishers do. It's literally, once a comic is published, they've forgotten about it. It doesn't exist anymore. It's just on to the next one.
But comics are disposable. If you look at who would buy Fantastic Spider-Man, what is it, volume 7, 8 now, number 26, I bought months ago. Who would give me money for that? It's basically toilet paper.
It is, yeah.
It's not a collectible item.
So you don't have a problem during COVID.
But there's
I stocked up. But the thing is, collectible items is Spawn #1, or the original appearance in Malibu.
But no, I pitched to Marvel and DC the concept of, if, like, you look at, I kind of get a little depressed. I see, I love people like Arthur Adams's work, and I love his covers. I see his covers, but I'm not going to buy a comic for a cover. I'll see it on Facebook. I know they do. I know they do. But what, I mean, really, like, we're
I get you.
That's
not my thing either.
No, when they were 10 cents or 25 cents, I'd buy a comic for a cover. But
I never lived during those times, so geez.
No. But I just think I would just I'd love to get someone like Arthur Adams, even if it's just 1 64-page annual a year, just give it, like, Longshot. Have him go back to Longshot, get Ann Nocenti and Arthur Adams back on Longshot, and give us a 64-pager once a year, the one-off. And what you do, if you do that, you'll keep the original trade in print, and every 64-pager is going to stay in print. And if you every 3 years you do a trade of the previous 3, and so now you've got another trade. So you don't have to rush. But you keep these books in print. People would want to have something like that. That's a nice, it's got a thick enough spine. You can put it on the shelf.
Yep.
It's like the old prestige format books that DC used to do, but just a tad thicker.
I miss those so much. I love the whole prestige,
Yeah.
the oversized graphic novels, the thin but oversized graphic novels.
Oh,
They
yeah,
used to
yeah.
do from DC and Marvel as well used to do them. Those were wonderful books, different things. They experimented in them.
Oh, absolutely, they did. But it's the idea of quality over quantity. And I think that there's a lot of quality writers and quality artists out there, but the products they're producing, I wouldn't say it to look at. You flick through it and you go, oh, artwork's great. It doesn't mean anything to me, though, because I don't recognize these characters. I don't know what part story this is. And, there is no, I know, people don't like the idea of casual readers anymore. It's as, but we need casual readers.
Yes, we do.
And you need to, we need to acknowledge comics for what they are. You should be able to read it, pick it up and read it as, what other printed material do you pick up and you need to buy it the following month or week to know what's going on. It's, newspapers are a complete read. Magazines are complete reads. Books are complete reads.
But again, we're talking old comic book style format. I remember in the 70s, there was your one and done issues, I mean, yes, there may have been an underlying theme, but that didn't, the part you could read that one single issue and feel satisfied that you read a complete adventure.
Yeah. So switch it up. So, I mean, again, it's make the floppy 64 pages, make that, publish less books every month, but just thicker books, built to last a little bit longer. Have a plan. I don't know. I honestly don't know what Marvel and DC's publishing plan is. I can't tell it from what they publish. I can't.
Look what Brian says. Brian says the collector nuance of comics as a driving force is what's hurting comics.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I remember, like, I think it was right after Dark Knight, and I think one of the first graphic novels that DC put out in oversized hardback format was Son of the Demon graphic novel.
I remember Michael Barr.
It was Michael Barr, Mike Barr, and Jerry Bingham was the artist. And I was like, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. I wouldn't, because it was like, I flicked through it and I was like, this is a regular issue of the comic printed hardback.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There was nothing about it that said, oh, this is wonderful. Look at this. Oh, this is a special story. No, it wasn't. It would have made a great annual.
Gotcha.
But
then think a few years later, Grant Morrison put out Arkham, and it was a huge seller.
Yeah.
Why? Because the art by McKean was very, very good.
Yep.
It was very different.
It was very different, and because of that, it stood out. It's you look at what Frank Miller and Bill Sienkiewicz did with Electra Assassin.
Oh wow! Great book.
I mean, it's a
European album. That was what it basically was. Right?
Yeah, like Frank Miller's Electra Lives book.
Yes, amazing book. The art book.
I remember the first time I saw any of that, it was just some blackline artwork, and I'm going like, it looks okay. And then I saw Lynn Varley's coloring on it like a couple of months later on it in some samples, and I was like,
George dropping, right?
This is gorgeous. This is amazing. Yeah.
Dave, it's funny. Brian Hawkins kind of sounds like you over here. He goes, what comics is his shift to a novel-like consumption, going back to your idea of that, that yearly big book event, do that year's worth adventure in one novel event a year.
Yeah.
I mean, so David Brian, over here seems to be someone that would be completely on board with that idea of yours.
Go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, look, what if you said, okay, my budget for comics is $20 a month. And what if that $20 was buying a 200-page hardback graphic novel every month, and it was brand new, and it would be you'd pick your characters, and if publishers became more like mainstream publishers in saying, okay, here's our print schedule, here's what we're publishing for the next 3 years, right? And the dates we're publishing it, so you can go instead of having previews and knowing, oh, this is what's coming out in 3 months' time. It'd be, oh, here's DC's print, here's their schedule, and here's all their print dates. Like when Marvel and DC, when Warner Brothers and Disney tell you, oh, well, here's when Black Panther 2 is coming out, here's where the Eternals coming out. You know what they're made to, like, releasing their films for the next 5 years.
It's an event and a half when they do that.
Exactly. Yeah. If Marvel and DC did the same thing, it would be great. Like, you could actually plan out. You could go, oh, okay, I know exactly how much. I could even because retailers would know exactly when everything's coming, what they could do is they could turn around to you and go, hey, there's a couple of months where you haven't ordered anything, but what you can do is, how about you pay a certain amount of months to them, and it's you get your books when they come out, pre-buy, pre-order.
Oh yeah, pre-order
Exactly.
at stock.
Like a
Come by, stand by, pick it up.
subscription model. Or I told you about this book by Joe Casey and Peter Kowalczyk. I really, really liked Sex. They finished the arc and said, after 3 years, we stop the single issues. We do a trade once a year when we have the time. And it's a gorgeous book. They put it out. Wonderful. I'm looking forward to the next. You don't need to buy a single issue.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think everyone should be doing that. I think that once you've used the floppers to establish what you're doing, I think with print, after that you don't need it. You just go. If you know you're going to print enough books, if you know the support is there, just go straight for the books. And I think the only thing is with now is you can make that choice of, okay, look, we're going to release digital versions of the floppies. We're going to serialize this as floppies, but just purely for digital. For those people who can't wait.
Yeah, but if you were to do this as DC, if you were to do this as Marvel, you could, because put out an original graphic novel as Batman with glorious art, or put out an original Avengers book.
Yeah,
it will sell. It will sell.
Oh yeah.
If you have the right artists, if you have the right creative team on it.
But you see, this is the fact that we have no ideas people in publishing at Marvel and DC, and it's. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude about anybody.
I get it.
It's just a fact. It's just they're not ideas people, and it's just how can we keep the pamphlets going? How can we keep this promotion? We've got this movie coming out in 2 years, so start seeding this character into every book you possibly can. And that's the mentality, and it's not allowed. It's not actually allowed to stand on its own 2 feet as a independent publisher. Like they don't have the independent decision making. Like I don't know at what stage and how the effects of Kevin Feige is going to have on Marvel Publishing, because now he apparently oversees what they're doing to some capacity.
Everything's going to tie into the movies. Everybody's going to look like the movies.
Well, then, if you're going to do that, just do it as one big graphic novel a year. But I
think he's going to have his hands full with the movies, because their Phase 4 looks really, really weak. And once that glow wears off, he's in deep trouble.
Well, he's also getting involved in Star Wars as well. So I think Phase 4 and Phase 5 of the Marvel movies this is going to be, can you keep pulling off the Guardians of the Galaxy? Like Guardians of the Galaxy did really well, and it wasn't a major Marvel book. So Phase 4 is kind of filling in the gaps between the return of the Fantastic Four and X-Men.
Let's see. Here, Brian also has another thing. He believes that Image and other indies should lead this, and not the big 2. How do you feel about that statement?
You can't rely on Marvel and DC, so you have to. And I think it'd certainly be a lot easier to pull the independents together. Mike Richardson, not so much. He's
Eric Stevenson. He has been around for since the 90s, and he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
But I would just, you need the Image founders. You need like Todd McFarlane.
Well, Tyler is already speaking.
Robert Kirkman, and Robert Kirkman. Those are leaders. You need the creative leaders to step up.
Yeah, but he's but McFarlane's way of stepping up is the big 2, Image, Dark Horse. But what about everyone else? So. Why they still feel separatist, even though I understand that they do a kind of a full 90% of the market apparently. Insane numbers out of 4 companies.
I mean, if you take all the licenses away from Boom, IDW, and Dark Horse, what do you have?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I understand. Like you go back and look at Marvel and DC, and they all did licensed books. Star Wars.
Dark Horse had the Dark Horse Presents that kind of presented some of their own stuff. So but
no,
not too well known.
Oh no, but again, when you look at it, it's
overall, it's not. The one doesn't have the same impact.
Yeah, Marvel and DC were always, and Image were driven by the creator-owned, or not the creator-owned, but the characters that they owned that were part of the company. Mm-hmm. Every company's had Star Trek, literally, stuff like that. I mean, is maybe that's what we need? Maybe we just need like cheap license books of properties that we like to get more people reading.
We need a wider variety of books, because not everybody is interested in superheroes.
True, I've been
if you look at the 70s books, the guy Seven Soldiers who put out these overviews of books. If you went into the store now, and it's 40 years ago, and there's horror comics, there's science fiction comics, there's all sorts of entertainment you can get from DC, or you could get from DC at that time. Now all you can get from DC is horror superheroes.
Yeah, I mean, when you go back and Tales of the Unexpected and Witching Hour and books like that for DC were actually very good sellers for them. We've treated anthology books as a sort of a bastard child, or things have become so far removed from comics being such a just chapter books, no solid stories. I would have thought that anthology books would still be popular just for the value of it, just being able to read a book. But I think that the mentality of the reader that wants multi-chapter stories isn't going to a 3-page story or a 10-page story in an anthology book isn't going to mean anything to them. It's just going to be too short.
I appreciate them. I love them personally.
But it's also interesting how we see a lot of parallels in the history of comic books, because what happened after the war was the superheroes were dying. They were no longer interesting. And you had guys like Simon Kirby who created Captain America a few years earlier and was sitting on top of the world. And they said, well, we can keep on doing superheroes, or we do something else. And they invented the romance comic book in 1947. And it sold millions per issue.
But that's what I mean about the ideas. There's ideas, man. It was, I remember I had in one of the meetings I had with Paul Levitz, he'd asked me to come up with some ideas. He said, like, Dave, you're the out of the box guy. Come in, come up with some stuff that's out of the box. And I came in with 3 different ideas. One was I'd been in touch with the people that at that point owned Hammer Films. Mm-hmm. And there's a very complex history to Hammer Films because a lot of the films were American distributors like Sony and Warner Brothers had remake rights and distribution rights to them. However, Hammer still had the right to produce the films, make them. So yes, Warner Brothers could say, yes, we're making one, but Hammer would have to actually be the ones to make it. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I negotiated a deal with Hammer Films to waive that right. And they would give Warner Brothers the right to remake the film entirely. But what we'd do is we'd start by doing graphic novels, revamps of the Hammer films. And from that, Warner Brothers could then make films from them.
Okay.
And I had some very interesting creators who were, very big creators lined up who were very interested in doing them. Another idea I brought at the same time was I'd reached out to a friend of mine who was a manager agent for the biggest manga artists in Japan. Everyone from Otomo, Shiro, to the guys who did like Crying Freeman, Fist of the North Star. So I was able to pitch the idea of basically doing mini-series of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, not Green. We weren't going to do Green Arrow. Mini-series by each of those creators, and then one of them would actually get to do a Justice League series at the end of it.
Okay.
And then the other thing I pitched was a weekly comic. There was a $1 weekly comic where it was only, I think it was 16 pages of comic strip. The rest of it wrapped in ads, basically, for clothes companies like Tommy Hilfiger, Gap, etc. And it was a true soap opera in that it was, the idea was young superheroes, and very young, which at the time DC didn't have much of in the way of they had like Teen Titans, but even they were growing up quite quickly. So the idea was to have a young group of superheroes, very similar in line to the mutants, but in a world where everyone was sponsored, and we were actually going to have sponsors for. So we'd basically have Nike Man, but it wouldn't be a consistent character because you might lose at the end of the year. You might lose the contract for Nike Man, and Nike Man becomes somebody else because Nike thinks that somebody else is going to be a much better sell.
Okay.
And it was.
So what happens to Nike Man though at the end of the contract? You know, if they don't resign, does Nike Man get killed mysteriously?
Oh no! I mean, like, you know, it's just basically that person can no longer wear the costume and can no longer be called Nike Man.
Okay.
It's literally like you're getting a ton of money. You're getting a ton of money for wearing the costume and being Nike Man.
Okay.
So
I would kill the former though, because
all of those got turned down. All of those got turned down by Paul. Paul didn't like Hammer films, so that was a no.
Really? Didn't like?
He didn't like
any specific reason?
No, he just didn't like him. He just didn't like. He goes, no.
He said no.
The manga line was a no. He didn't like manga.
Wow.
And he was honest. He just said he didn't like it. He couldn't see. He didn't understand the appeal. So if he couldn't understand it, he didn't want to publish it.
But geez, you got to be a risk taker, because you know.
Yes, you do. But that wasn't Paul, unfortunately.
Damn.
And the comic book series that was all about young characters. There was one character in it who was sort of in his later 20s, who was actually the older brother to the current Nike Man, who had been in that position years ago, was now a police officer, but had superpowers. He goes, build that. I like that character. Can you build that character up? And we'll maybe set it in the DC universe. And he assigned me Andy Helfer as an editor. And the first thing, like, we went outside, and Andy was a smoker, so he wanted a cigarette. And the first thing out of his mouth was, well, you know, this isn't going anywhere, don't you? I said, yeah, no, I figured that. I'm not interested. That's not the story I wanted to tell. He goes, yeah, because the moment I was assigned as your editor meant that this project wasn't going to go anywhere.
Wow.
Ooh.
And unfortunately, you know, that's the way.
Was that business typically then how it was?
Well, don't forget. Everyone forgets. Like, everything is about personalities. Everything. You know, there was it was about 1996, 97. San Diego Comic-Con actually tried to create a group gathering of publishers, to do something about the industry, because we were hard on the heels of the massive implosion. The distribution companies it was still Diamond and Capital, but all the others had gone. And so what they tried, they organized a summit in San Francisco, in Napa Valley, actually. It was basically a wine tour week. And I was invited along because I was currently head of Penthouse Comics, the co-publisher of Penthouse Comics, which was a very good seller. And people like Bob Chapman of Graffiti Designs was there. Dark Horse were invited. Marvel were invited. DC were invited. Jeff Smith from Cartoon Books was invited.
Nice.
The problem was that, so Terry Stewart, who was head of Marvel at the time, decided, why do I want to be part of this? No, I don't think I can make it. And so he decided he was going to send Matt Ragone, who was his marketing director at the time. Well, Paul Levitz isn't going to go to a meeting where his counterpart isn't going to be there. So he sent Bob Wayne, his marketing director counterpart. Mike Richardson, always, you know, he thought Dark Horse was up there with Marvel and DC. So he decided, well, I'm not going to go. I'm going to send Dave Scroggie instead. So once you've decided that none of the decision makers can come to this week-long event, which San Diego Comic-Con still held, and there were some very interesting conversations that took place there. We all really knew in our hearts that nothing was really going to happen because of it, because no one was taking it seriously. And that's what worries me about today. You know, it needs. I have no faith in anybody running the industry at the moment, and I look around and I go like, who? Show me someone who's being outright independent, strong leader. I don't see one. I just don't see it.
Even if the leader does come, though, it's about unifying everyone, so everybody setting their stuff aside, you know, just for the greater good.
Yeah, but where are the ideas coming from? Who's going to actually generate some ideas about how to steer the industry?
Okay.
And I don't see anybody currently in place in any of the major companies with those ideas and with the ability and with the ability to come up with a decent plan. I mean, let's be honest, if they could come up with a decent plan, their comics would be something better already, and they're not.
True.
So
True. So how damn, I hope we could overcome this. I mean, if this lasts any much longer, can it overcome it? Like, to you, what's the deadline? If we can't bounce back, let's say in 3 months, you know, is that really gonna kind of be an awful sign?
Well, look at what Todd said in that Forbes interview with Rob. He's talking about, he knows that the consumer is addicted to comics, and he's about like, look, we've got to act quickly because otherwise these guys are going to go cold turkey and get that, you know,
they're gonna sober up.
Yeah, they're sober up
Technically,
and it's like, well, really, is that it? I mean, I've always
didn't miss going, so
look, every major juncture in comics, whether it was Crisis on Infinite Earths or the New 52 or, you know, whatever, Secret Wars. Yeah, every one of these events, I've always been around somebody who, you know, when everyone says, hey, this is a major jumping on point, like this is a jumping on point for new readers, they've always had somebody who said, yeah, but it's also a major jumping off point for old readers.
Absolutely.
yes.
And, you know, I think at every juncture, every time we've done these major events, you know, every time a major change is made with a character that, it's like instead of creating a new character, they have to change an old one.
Agreed. I mean, just show me a whole different Earth if that's what you want to do, so that way it doesn't feel that disrespected. You know, where we could bounce back, you know, one time or another, or tell stories in between. But yeah, I'm just saying, complete change.
Marvel did that was the ultimate line, and it was very interesting at the beginning.
No, I mean, look, you know, I didn't call it the ultimate line, but that's what there was a point where I nearly joined Marvel, and I'd been asked to join to relaunch the Epic imprint.
Okay.
And it was just at the time where it was literally, I was about to sign the dotted line on a contract when Bill James joined the company.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was Bob Harris was the editor-in-chief, and he'd been basically the acting publisher up until that point. So Bob Harris had called me and said, "Hey, look, this should be just a formality, but Bill wants to meet you. So he wants to chat and talk." So I came in, I talked to him. He was very pleasant, very nice. We had a really nice conversation. He goes, "Yeah, this is great." And then when everyone left the room and we were just chatting, he goes, "Hey, could you do me a favor? Could you meet me outside of work tomorrow, or the next day, maybe a Starbucks early in the morning?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll come in early." Okay. And we met and we had a very honest conversation. He was like, "Look, I don't want to waste money doing Epic, relaunching the Epic line."
Okay.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, why's that?" And he said, "I just think the line needs, as it is, needs work." And I was going, "I agree with you there." And he said to me, "But would you come on board? Would you help us do that? Would you?" And I said, "Why?" It's like, there's Marvel's published, remember, this was 2000, about that time.
Okay.
Just before that, 1999, I think. And I was like, all the way through the 90s, under Pullman, so much crap had been produced, so much stuff thrown against the wall. I was like, why? It's like, it's sausages to me. I want to produce something better. And he goes, and so he actually asked me, "So what would you do?" And I said, "I'd create a new line, start from scratch, but do it in a new format." I would, back then Wizard was still on the stands doing reasonably well. So my idea was to do a sister magazine that looked as though it would go alongside Wizard, but it would be a graphic novel every month.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be called Marvel Universe, and issue 1 would have Spider-Man. Issue 2 would have the Fantastic Four. Issue 3 would have the Hulk. Issue 4 would have, say, Thor or Captain America. 5 would be the X-Men. 6 would be the Avengers or something. Or maybe it would be, another character. So you build up to the Avengers as the end of the first year or second year.
Okay.
But you're starting over again. You're beginning, but in the current day. We're now in the 21st century, and Peter Parker has just been bitten by a spider.
Yeah.
We have cell phones, we have tablets, we have all the things they didn't have back then. But each one is a self-contained graphic novel. And yeah, it would connect to the next one, but it wouldn't be a continued, nothing would be a cliffhanger. There might be, in the same way you'd have at the end of a Spider-Man issue, he'd finished the story, but he was sad at the end. He was, he hadn't, on a personal level, he hadn't been able to do the thing he wanted to do, but he had saved the world. You'd still have things like that, but you'd also have back matter in there of, hey, here's season 1. Here's a season 1 episode guide from the original Spider-Man TV series. Here's some cheats for the Spider-Man video game. Here's some upcoming news on the Spider-Man film. And you'd have that. And then simultaneously, the book would be printed on better quality paper, much thicker cardstock covers, and would go into the bookstores and comic book stores as a $9.99 Spider-Man graphic novel, volume 1. Mm-hmm. And with the idea being that anyone who goes into a bookstore for the first time and says, "Hey, I've just heard about Spider-Man. Where do I start?" You point them to these. You go, "That's it. Go over there. That's Spider-Man. That's his origin. Go from there." And once you've got them hooked, then you can show them well, here's the original Spider-Man from 1960s. Here's this, here's that.
An entry point.
Be entry point on a more mass market level. And he liked that idea. Ultimately, he didn't like the collection idea, and the reason I didn't join Marvel was actually because I was working for a film production company at the time as well, where I was working with Avi Arad, who was the producer of the Marvel movies. Yeah. And he wanted me to stay with that film production company because he was kind of double dipping.
All right.
He'd given us some rights he'd given us the rights to Damage Control.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we were developing Damage Control with Village Roadshow.
Yes, I remember. I remember they were supposed to even do a TV show, and then what happened?
Again, it was just once X-Men had started, once X-Men had launched and successful, you know, he wanted to quickly take back some of the projects he'd given us. We had like Lunatic, which was a Keith Giffen created character that was kind of like Marvel's attempt to do a Lobo.
Oh, I remember. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really? In the Defenders. He was in the Defenders, right?
Yeah, and we had Squadron Supreme as well.
Oh man, I would love to have seen more stories with them. You know.
Yeah. So he didn't actually want me to, because that would have meant I would have stopped working for that production company and focused full time for Marvel. And I was helping him develop one of his own personal projects. So he didn't want me to go to Marvel.
None. You know what? Though? That idea, did you pitch it to DC as well? Because it kind of sounds a lot like the Earth One series of hardcovers that they do. You know, they did Superman beginning. Yeah.
I hadn't pitched it to them. I'd mentioned it. I'd mentioned the fact that that's what I pitched to Marvel.
So Earth One works that way. You know,
it does.
You told stories in modern times. You know, Superman, Batman. Like in the Batman, I love it. It's Alfred basically teaches his ass, because Alfred was some badass dude, and back in the day, and he trains Bruce. So gives us a different look and take on the trainings.
But again, yeah, no, I mean, I thought that they were going to get off to a good start there, but they just
they fell off. They fell off.
I mean, do they even publish one a year now?
Yeah, Green Lantern, I think, was the last one to have come out. I've been buying them. I enjoy them because again, it's different looks and takes, and I do like that approach. So but if you acquire.
Oh yeah, but if you'd said like, okay, well, there's 12 months in the year, so January is Superman.
I do it a lot. I spent $20.
Yeah, and there you go. You do that.
But I think they stopped experimenting because I heard the Black Label line stopped it.
Yeah, because of Black Label now. A shame. I mean, just continue this series. Why? Because they want to show the bat thingy. Next thing you know, they're gonna show Wonder Woman's thingy. Oh my God, that's next.
Well, I noticed that there was on one of the chains we had on Twitter, someone had commented after Blood of Kirby was talking about the Penthouse Comics book. Someone had commented like, "Oh, well, that's the way that seems to be the way that DC is going now."
No, they are not.
No.
So what can we expect? What do you want to see right now, though? What's the biggest change you want to see? At least right now, happen overnight, if possible. Your dream wish to happen overnight, right now, for the industry.
Make a plan.
Yeah, I mean,
make a plan.
Become Bruce Wayne.
Well, no, as Todd McFarlane said, like, look, even if it's not the perfect plan, have everybody at least agree on something and try following through on it. If you look at look at what's happening. We're facing this pandemic at the moment, and we're not getting a cohesive. The government's not being like we don't have various parties uniting to say, hey, we're going to all help. We're going to get this message across. We're going to help everybody. This is all. It's a mess, and I just see that being, if the government can't do it, what sort of symbol is that going to be for even something as small as the comics market to the direct sales market to get their act together?
Yeah, right.
I remembered like some of the great retailers like Jim Henley and Bill Leibowitz, Buddy Saunders. These guys, like they had real, you could sit them down and talk to them about anything, and they would help you come up with a plan.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you seen the new Jim Henley's universe?
Yeah. No.
Have you seen the new one though?
Yeah, I have.
Do you like it compared to the old spot?
Oh,
honestly.
it's different. No, it's just different. It's different. It's fun. It's great because it's still the same familiar faces.
Yeah, same familiar faces.
It's still the
Absolutely
same familiar
agree.
faces.
Anytime I go there, yes. But the look,
Yeah.
I don't know. The other one, it just had that classic look feel to it. This is it's modernized. It's new.
Oh, I mean,
It's so different.
no, I mean,
When they moved, it broke my heart. Like, damn.
Oh, it was. I mean, it was. When
Like, what are they talking about? These great shop in New York City.
No, when I
Street from the Empire State Building before.
See, it was great when I like at Penthouse. I worked almost just around the corner at Madison Square Garden, so it was easy for me to just drop in there, you know, on the way to or from work, pick up some comics,
and you could peruse because the shop was so big.
Oh, it was. I mean, but again, you see, isn't that a symbol of, you know, just comics in general? Like all the big stores, like Meltdown in Los Angeles.
I never got to go there. I always heard all these stories. I'm like, damn, where?
But it was. See, but again, what they did, it was like this massive place, and they tried everything. They turned the back of it into a comedy store. You could sub-license, like you'd come in and you could rent a section of the store to sell your own stuff in it.
I mean, now the best way, imagine if these stores existed now with that type of space, basically, hey, half a shop is through some podcasts in the back and some YouTube.
Meltdown tried that. Right? Meltdown had their own studio for podcasts.
Oh, really? And what happened?
And you could rent it out. Yeah, and they did. They tried doing their own shopping network from there. No, they tried a lot.
I love those risk takers like that. People that at least try, you know, navigate, and then you can learn from whatever didn't work, and hopefully be able to do that for yourself. Shit, I want to get there at one point for us.
Oh yeah, no, I remember the Lord of the Rings group, the OneRing.net, used to run their podcast out of there, and they've now moved to. There's a there's a really cool location. There's a bar on Hollywood Boulevard called Scum and Villainy.
Oh, I love the name.
And it looks like when you go in, it looks exactly like the cantina scene from Star Wars. You go in, it's got the same alcoves everywhere. It looks like you're on a Star Wars set in Mos Eisley. It looks great.
And I hope the drinks are just as good.
Yeah, I saw Han Solo while I was there.
I'm sure. I mean, there was a spot in New York and Brooklyn, the comic something, I forgot, but it's actually a comic book themed bar. Right. He had Superman protruding out the front. It's right. You know, it's right underneath the train tracks. It looks really, it's really cool though.
Yeah.
The whole floor he lined up with Chop comics. I mean, collectors would have a heart attack. Like, isn't that from this issue? Oh my God! You know, he chopped that up. You know, but he didn't care. It's all for decoration. And every drink on the roster is superhero based. All I say is, if you have 2 Tony Starks, you'll be done.
Yeah. See, it's funny. Like you've got a theme bar like that where you could imagine having a comics rack in that bar where you go in for a drink and just pull a comic off the rack.
Yeah, I would put free comics there. Take it, 25-cent stuff.
Oh yeah, but think about it though. It's if you couldn't do that today because it goes back to like if someone would come in. Oh yeah, I'm going to sit at the bar, read a comic, and I'll pick a Batman comic. Something's happened before this issue. Do you have another one?
No, go to Mike's shop across the street.
Yeah. So.
I'll market the hell out of that. I'm gonna tease you.
Oh yeah.
Again, the master plan. Yeah, we're gonna dominate. No even worries there. So Chris has here been observing and thinking a lot. And Chris is over here plotting from the Buse cave. You know, what are you thinking over there, Chris?
I think it really depends. I think the comic book industry and the retailers are at a crossroads at the moment, and. Let's say I'm thankful that I'm not in the position, as also Todd said, well, basically they're not going to appoint me, and that's a good thing, to make this kind of decision, because as you said, this is a complex team. And as they've said before, there's lots of interests involved. These are massive studios. Disney's in trouble at the moment. They're not going to save the comic book industry for Marvel Comics. That's their job. And if they cannot get it done, that's Marvel Comics. I mean, it's a hell of a legacy. If that doesn't work, it will be very sad. And I think the idea needs to be that they all get together and at least have a plan for themselves, if not for the whole industry.
Absolutely, because again, everybody talks the retailer's perspective too. Besides, like Comic Crusaders, for example, we live off of the content released by these companies, the press releases, the news of the newest and upcoming books and whatnot to help the creators and market their content. Right now, we're not marketing much, are we? Only very few people are releasing things. 2000 AD has stood strong. They will continue to release in both print and digital. Action Lab is releasing strictly digital, but they're releasing something for people, what they call their digital first.
Right.
So they're doing something to provide new content, even though it's not print. But that leaves obviously our news to a minimum. And Comic Crew, again, we don't want to focus on just sad news. I don't want Comic Crew to turn into COVID-19 Central. I mean, we got to keep.
But think about this. But think about the content that already exists.
Oh, absolutely. We have tons of stuff that you guys could revisit. I mean, Chris's columns, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's an education. That damn EC Comics columns.
Listen, Christ. You should actually do a podcast with Chris reading his columns.
It needs to be a college course. We need to do EC Comics 101 with the dean, Chris Buse at the helm.
Listen, this Wednesday, I reveal the secret history of DC Comics.
Oh shit! Oh my!
That's what I was waiting for. I want to read that.
And next week I will tell you about how Jack Kirby influenced the Golden Green Lantern. A story untold so far.
Oh really?
Influenced which one?
The Golden Age Green Lantern.
Oh.
Really? Hey, Chris be digging in. This is the Buse Cave. I think Chris Buse's real name is Wayne. He's dressing up like Thomas Wayne in Germany, kicking ass.
Yes. I've got all these informants paying me. I'm paying them to give me all the information from 40 years, 50 years ago.
All the gossip. He's in an old folks' homes, people. Taking them treats for information.
From a distance, from a safe distance.
Yes, please keep 6 feet away at all times. Listen, like last night, guys, I went to Walmart just to pick up a few things. I never in my life stood online to go inside a Walmart.
Yeah,
I was online like for at least a good 25 minutes to get in there. I'm like, this is insane. I felt like I was at Grand Adventure. What's the ride over here?
Well, think about it. It's like it's not a case of right now everyone figuring out where they can get their comics from. There's nothing open. Like unless you're going to get your groceries, that's it. I mean, Walmart's a rare one allowed open because they sell food as well.
And you can pick up those Walmart specials from your local Walmart if they still have any.
Oh yeah, but I mean, it's everyone's starting to talk about where are you going to get your haircut now? Like everyone thinking that it was going to be over in a couple of weeks, and I think everyone's coming around to the idea that this is going on for a lot longer.
I let my hair grow anyway. I'm fine so long as I could shave. Keep this going. I'm fine.
I noticed Chris is fine.
Oh, Chris got that whole Lex Luthor.
Going to shave.
Yeah.
Do it all myself. That's no problem.
Oh man, you know what? I think one of these days I want to see Chris Buse in a white T-shirt and please wear one earring and hold them up. Right, with the clean, no?
Just for you.
Or you could wear a beige trench coat and a nice detective hat and be looking like good old Kojak Telly.
Oh yeah, I was
I have the John Constantine trench coat, so there's no problem there.
Well, you know what? There you go. Just wear a wig and light up a stove and wear that trench coat. John Constantine, like Dave just said.
I have no problem with lighting up.
I think we need to do a cosplay episode. Everybody
Dave needs to teach me a British accent then.
Awesome,
But,
guys. This has been great. It's been nice to actually see you guys. I'm glad to see Dave that he looks in good health. And again, man, thank you for your efforts out there. Oh shit, the guns, bro, the guns.
that's it. I'm fine.
Yeah, not as big as Hulk Hogan's, but he still got the gun.
Nah, I don't want them that big.
You got the 24-inch pythons, brother. Awesome, guys. This has been great, man. It's been really good hanging out with you guys right now.
Yeah.
We got 5 minutes left. I want to thank Brian Hawkins, random dude that has been asking questions and whatnot throughout the chat. There was someone else. Let me scroll up. Been a couple of names over here. What was that other one? Blanca Elena Togni Silva. Very long name, but hello.
We should continue in this format. I think that's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Hey guys, well, you know what? Let's leave it up to the fans. Do you guys want us to do our podcast this way? I mean, obviously, I will repost it on our Podbean so that way, people could listen to it on their iTunes and whatnot. We didn't share any images today, but in the future, I know we will, and a lot more, especially as we get closer to revealing Chris Buse identity in the Buse cave over there. That's a computer behind them, folks. It's a whole hologram.
Mask off.
Yeah.
Mask off.
Awesome, folks. It's been fun. I'm Omega with Dave Elliott and Chris Buse. Check us out. Guys, when do you want to do this again? 2 weeks?
Yeah.
We can do that.
All right, let's plan on 2 weeks. But, fam, for real, vote. What do you guys want? You want to see us see our mugs more in video? You like the podcast format more, this audio? Let us know. We had a great time, though. Again, David, stay safe. You as well.
Thanks.
Yes,
I'm Omega. Everybody.
And any ideas? Sometimes we do it's coming up with topics. Anytime you think that we might have some answers to some questions, long held questions you've had, you never know. Between the three of us, we might actually be able to answer it. So,
wait, and before we leave, there was something we were talking about as well. Let's just tease it a little bit. That little giveaway we're thinking about for people out there that are trying to get into the business. We know that Dave has been in the business for a minute, very well known man, with a very respectable opinion. And so what we were thinking about is that maybe starting next podcast, we're going to set up some type of giveaway where you can submit a portfolio for portfolio review by Dave on air. We will have our rules set, what the limits are and whatnot, because there's a criteria here, so that way it is something full. You don't want 1 or 2 pages. This is pro. This is David talking. Dave, you want to elaborate a little bit just to let them know kind of what to expect?
Well, I mean, one of the things I know, I mean, look, as I got into the industry as an artist myself, and so being an artist, editor, publisher, all of that, one of the things I've noticed over the years is more and more you go to conventions. You see all these people lugging their portfolios. They've spent every penny they have to get to San Diego to have people look at their portfolios.
Yep.
Only to have editors ducking out of meetings like, we're not looking at portfolios.
As it happens.
Stuff like that. So, it's really hard to get anyone to just look at it who's not your mum or dad or brothers.
To give some real feedback.
Yeah. And so I'm more than, happy. I mean, when I can. I mean, it's I can't look at everybody's, but we're going to
have a set criteria. We're going to have only a limited amount of spaces. You're going to be able to feel free to submit, but David will have, pick and choose based on his time and the things that you could talk about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And this isn't going to be sort of like a magic thing where, wow, hey, this is great. I'm going to send you over to such and such an editor and you get work. I can't promise that, but I can at least give you some really good pointers.
Some real constructive criticism.
Yeah.
To better your craft.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm gonna mute you guys just for a sec. I want to do the outro and then just hang on tight while I close out the show. But with that, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Chris. I'm Omega with UCPN. Thanks for joining us for the International Comics Collective, and we're This is an official Undercover Capes podcast.
Thank you for listening to the ICC and Undercover Capes. Make sure to visit our website, undercovercapes.com, and also visit the International Comics Collective on Twitter.